Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. And so for my first challenge, I'm going to set myself a skill game and say how hard can it be to predict the football results, specifically the English Championship, which is a league I probably know the most about. I suspect it's going to be very difficult. After all, if it was easy, let's face it, I'd already be placing bets and I'd probably have become a millionaire. So my initial guess of how hard is it to predict the football results is going to be a solid 8 out of 10. Consequently, my goal is to see how well I do compared to other people using the football prediction app Superbrew. So this is the Superbrew website where I've currently completed the first 23 rounds, half of the season. I've currently been making predictions basically using my best guess, just whatever my heart and head said at the time. So I'm going to try and predict the champions' results for the second half of the season. But instead of just guessing, I'm going to try and use a bit of science. Essentially, I've been through the results of the first 23 rounds and recorded them on a spreadsheet. Superbrew also gives you the betting odds with a betting company called Hollywood Bets, so I can hopefully see how often the favourites have actually won. I can also go through all the previous results and try and figure out what are the most common score lines, bearing in mind the betting odds at the time. So at this point, I should probably also mention the Superbrew scoring system, as this is going to have an impact on what scores to predict. This is on the screen now. As you can see, there's 3 points for an exact score, 1.5 points if you get the score right, but the score is close, which basically means one goal either way for the home side or the away side. 1 point if you get the result right, but the score is way off. No points if you get it wrong. And also they do an additional points for slam points, which is if you make 6 to 7 predictions correct, you get an additional point. 8 to 10, 2 points, and 11 to 16 correct predictions, 3 points. So this shows where I currently stand in the prediction tables. As you can see, my current global position is at 1,375th out of nearly 6,000. In the United Kingdom, I'm 371 out of nearly 1,700. And in a separate group I belong to, which is the Sheffield Wednesday fans group, I'm currently 32nd out of 92. So you can see I haven't been particularly doing well so far. So let's see, with a bit of science and a bit of essentially looking at past results, can I use that to predict the rest of the season and specifically round 24, which is the next round coming up. So here's the spreadsheet I've created from all the games which are currently taking place for the first 23 rounds. So as you can see, the round here on the left, round 1, if I go right down to the bottom, this is round 23. These are all the games listed there. And then the score, the home score, the away score, and the result. Then what I've done is I've put in here the odds from Hollywood Bets, which shows how likely, according to Hollywood Bets, they were to win, lose, or draw. And obviously, you would imagine if a betting company is making money from it, then their predictions, you would imagine, would be relatively good. So just to quickly explain the betting odds. The betting odds here mean, for example, if I just go to, say, Sheffield United versus QPR here. Sheffield United at home, QPR away. The result ended up 2-2. But at the time, the odds were Sheffield United to win of 1.69. Effectively, what it means is if you put £1 on, you would have got £1.69 back, including your pound. So it was about, I think in more conventional odds term, I think you'll call it 10 to 7. If you put £10 on, you get £7 back. Then over here in these two columns here, I've then basically graded each odds in one of three categories. Either 1.2 or less, i.e. you're a heavy favourite to win, or you've been graded as 2.11 to 2.4, so you're pretty good favourite, if not a heavy favourite. And then the third category is 2.41 or above. So you may have been a slight favourite, but probably it would have only been a slight favourite. You're probably against you. And so just the same, I've done that for the away. So for the away one, if I pick one that was pretty much a favourite there, unfortunately, Sheffield Wednesday versus Leeds United. Leeds United were 1.81, which means they were a heavy favourite to win. And as it turns out, that's exactly what they did. So what I've done after that is I've now created a pivot table of essentially all those results to see how it actually transpired. Did the favourites win when they were at home? Did the favourites win when they were away? Well, as we can see then, so out of the 268 games so far, which I've recorded, there were a few missing from postponements and a couple where the odds weren't recorded, but essentially that is 99% of the games. As you can see, if there was a home game where they were massive favourites, well, unsurprisingly, they won nearly 64% of the time, drew 24%, and only lost 12%, which is what you would expect. Maybe interestingly, irrespective of the odds, if an away team won, it was quite rare. An away team only won, regardless, irrespective of the odds, only 23% of the time, which I thought was a little bit surprising. And especially if we go down to the away odds now, we can see that where there was a heavy favourite, where you'd imagine the away team would win, you'd imagine they'd be very likely to win. Actually, they've only so far managed to win just the same amount of times as actually it was a draw. So the next thing I've done is to say, okay, we've got a rough idea now of whether a home team is a favourite, if they're going to win, whether we think that if the home team are not a favourite, what do we think the results are going to be? If the away team is a favourite, do we actually think they're going to win? By the looks of it, maybe not. Okay, so is there a way of getting an average goal score? So if I go to the next tab, this here shows all the times that the home team was a massive favourite. So the odds were 2.1 or less. And as you can see, on the left-hand column here is home goals, and across the top is away goals. So as we can see, the actual most common scoreline out of the 116 occurrences when this happened was actually 1-0 to the home team. So the home team won 1-0. The most common scoreline for the home team was 37 times they got won by scoring at least 2 goals, or 2 goals, I should say. And the most common scoreline for the away team was 0. So I think in order to predict this, you've got to predict that the home team are going to win when they're heavy favourites. But we've also got to bear in mind the Super Brew scoring system, whereby if you get a close result, as in 1 away, you'll get 1.5 points. If you get an exact score, you'll get 3 points. So I don't think there's any point predicting a 1-0 scoreline, even though it was a very, very marginal favourite in terms of that's happened the most. I think the best scoreline to go for is what's almost the most common anyway, which is a 2-0 scoreline. That way, if it's 1-0, we'll still get 1.5 points for a close result. If it is 2-0, we'll get 3 points for the exact result. And if it's 2.1, which is also very likely, 2-1, which is very likely, then we'll also get 1.5 points. Therefore, if I go back to the pivot table, if the odds for a home team are heavy favourites, then we're going to predict a 2-0 win always. So if I go to the next tab, where the home team is a slight favourite, the actual most common scoreline, where the home team was a reasonable favourite but not a heavy favourite, was actually 1-1. However, if we have a look, the home team actually was most likely to score 1 goal 18 times out of 44, and the away team 17 times scored 0. So I think, bearing in mind that we'll still get the close point for 2-0 and we'll still get the close point for 2-1, I think for this time, I think we have to predict every time the home team is a favourite, but not a heavy favourite, we'll predict 1-0. And if I go to the next tab, which is where the home team isn't really a favourite at all or could be behind, again, the most common scoreline there by far is actually a 1-1 draw. Out of the 110 times this has happened, 48 times the home team have got 1 goal and 38 times the away team have got 1 goal. So in that situation, we get 3 points for 1-1. But also, if it's 0-0, we'll get a close score for 1.5 points. And if it is 2-2 or 3-3, we'll also get the result or close points there. So I think for that one, we're always going to predict 1.1. Now, if we go to the away scores, where the away team was a heavy favourite, the actual most common result was actually a 0-0 draw. 12 times where the away team were a heavy favourite, the home team got 12 goals. But where the away team were a heavy favourite, they still got 11 times. So on the basis that if we get an exact score for 0-0 and a close score for 1-1, I think we should predict for this, always predict 0-0, which isn't what you would think. You would imagine in a situation where the away team was a heavy favourite that you should always predict an away win. Well, according to this at the moment, it's not saying that. So we're going to stay with that. Just quickly to go through the other ones, where the away team is a favourite but not a heavy favourite. You can see the actual most common result is actually losing 1-0. However, close by to that is a 1-1 result. The most common scoreline for both teams is the home team is score 1 goal is 12, and the away team, well, it's always the same. They're just as likely to get 8 goals in each. So I think we go for a 1-1 with that. And lastly, when the away team is not a favourite at all, the most common scoreline is a 1-1 draw. However, it's only very slightly a 1-1 draw, having said that. But a lot of the time it is a draw. So if we predict a 1-1 draw, then I think we'll also get the results for the other times it is a draw. And if we go back to the pivot table, I think what we will do for this one is we'll predict a 1-1 draw always. However, as the stats change and as we analyse it a little bit more, and maybe as we learn a little bit more, then we'll start to change these predictions. So our final step is to make the first lot of predictions for round 24. So here I am on the Super Brew website. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at the odds. So the home team, Norwich, 1.44. Home team is heavy favourites. Home team is heavy favourites, therefore 2-0. Okay, now Preston North End. Preston North End, they're slight favourites here. And against my team, I must admit, and Sheffield Wednesday have been doing very well. So my heart here would probably say maybe a Wednesday away win. However, I'm going to go with what I've put down here, which is the home team is not a favourite, not a heavy favourite, or even more, maybe more a slight favourite, 1-1. So I'm going to stick with that, and I'll go with that. Next up, Sheffield United versus West Brom. Now, my head here is saying the same as what my prediction probably would be. However, I'm going to stick by the system, which is heavy favourite at home, 2-0. As it is over here. Okay, next up, Blackburn Rovers versus Hull City. Hull haven't been doing very well. I would predict a home win. I would go with the odds. Heavy favourite. I'm just going to stick to what I think is the most likely to get me points. This is a 2-0 win. Bristol City versus Portsmouth. Again, a heavy favourite for home, so stick with the system. I'm going to stick with 2-0 for heavy favourites if they're at home. Coventry. And again, we've got the same result here, which is heavy favourite Coventry 1.75 to 0. Next up, Oxford. And exactly the same again. Oxford are at home, heavy favourites, therefore 2-0. Next up, Stoke City versus Sunderland. So the away team here is slight favourite. So this time we're going to look over here. Away, slight favourite, 1-1. Swansea versus Luton Town. We've got to see Swansea are just heavy favourites. So at this point we're going to go 2-0. Okay, to go on to the next one then. So this time it's Watford versus Cardiff City. Watford are heavy favourites, so I'm not going to think about it again. I'm just going to go heavy home favourites, 2-0. Okay, this time Derby County versus Leeds United. Now my head is going, this is an away win every day of the week. I mean, and to be honest with you, I think this is where I should probably do a little bit more analysis into how often actually have Leeds ever been heavy favourites and not gone on to win. But I'm going to stick with the system at least for now. And the system says away, heavy favourites, 0-0. I already don't like that, but that's what I'm going to put in. Okay, this time Middlesbrough versus Burnley. Again, I mean, if you'd have asked me, I would have probably said a Burnley win here, to be honest with you. But we're going to go for home favourites, but not heavy favourites. So if I look down here, I'm going to put 1-1. And they're my predictions then for the week. So please let me know in the comments what your predictions are for the week. I can see a lot of results there, which I probably wouldn't have picked if I hadn't have been using what I'm going to call the system. So please let me know in the comments. I will be back before round 25 to view how I've done, see whether I've moved up or down in the Super Rugby League standings, and see, is the system working or does it maybe need tweaking along the way? See you next time. Thanks.